The morning air felt different in Napa Valley. Daniel Richardson stepped out of his black SUV and took a deep breath, trying to remember the last time he'd actually stopped to breathe. 6 months, maybe? The tech world didn't slow down for anyone, and neither did he. At 38, he'd built an empire that most people only dreamed about. But lately, the penthouse offices and endless board meetings felt suffocating. That's why he'd bought this vineyard. Well, one of the reasons, his assistant had handled everything through a shell company, some legal structure his lawyers recommended for privacy. Daniel barely remembered signing the papers. It was just another property, another investment in a portfolio that could fill a book. But today, standing here with the sun warming his face and endless rows of grapevines stretching before him, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. He started walking, leaving his driver behind. The property manager was supposed to meet him in an hour, but Daniel wanted to see the place alone first. Get a feel for it. His Italian leather shoes weren't exactly made for dirt paths, but he didn't care. The vines were heavy with grapes, almost ready for harvest. He didn't know much about winemaking, but he knew beauty when he saw it. The path curved around a small hill, and Daniel followed it, his mind already wandering back to the conference call he'd have later. He was thinking about quarterly projections when he heard the voice. A woman's voice, clear and confident, giving instructions to someone about irrigation systems and soil pH levels. He almost smiled. The property manager, probably. At least she sounded like she knew what she was doing. But then he saw her. Daniel stopped walking. His feet just stopped moving, like his brain had forgotten how to send the signal to his legs, because the woman standing 30 feet away, clipboard in hand, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, wasn't just any property manager. It was Naomi, his ex-wife. The woman he'd divorced 5 years ago, the woman he'd spent 3 years married to, and another 2 years trying to forget, the woman who'd walked away with nothing from their marriage except her pride and a broken heart. His broken heart, too, if he was being honest. Though he'd never admitted that to anyone, what was she doing here? On his property? Managing his vineyard? Daniel's heart hammered in his chest. Naomi hadn't seen him yet. She was focused on a middle-aged man who was nodding along to whatever she was explaining. Something about water conservation. She looked different. Older, yes, but not in a bad way. More settled. She wore jeans and work boots and a simple blue button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. Her skin glowed in the sunlight, that same warm brown that he used to trace with his fingers during lazy Sunday mornings that felt like they belonged to another lifetime. He should say something. Announce himself. But his throat felt tight, and besides, what would he even say?
Hey, funny running into you on the property I secretly own?
That would go over well. Before Daniel could decide what to do, he heard them. Children's voices, high and excited, calling out from somewhere behind the rows of vines. Mama, Mama, look what we found. 3 small figures burst into view, running straight toward Naomi. 3 identical children moving like a little storm of energy and laughter. They couldn't have been more than 4 years old. 2 boys and a girl, all wearing matching red shirts and denim shorts. Daniel watched as Naomi's entire face changed. The professional mask dropped, and pure love radiated from her as she crouched down, arms wide open. The children crashed into her, all talking at once, holding up leaves and rocks and what looked like a very confused ladybug. One at a time, Naomi laughed, her voice soft in a way he remembered from before everything went wrong. Jordan, you first. What did you find? But Daniel wasn't listening to what the little boy was saying. He was staring at 3 small faces that made his blood run cold and hot at the same time, because those children didn't just look like any kids. They looked like him. The little girl turned her head, showing him her profile, and Daniel actually took a step back. She had his eyes, not just the same color, that unusual gray-green that people always commented on, but the exact same shape, the same slight upturn at the outer corners. The boy called Jordan had a dimple in his chin, the same dimple Daniel saw every morning when he shaved. The third child, another boy, had Daniel's exact smile, that crooked grin that his mother always said made him look mischievous. No, this couldn't be real. Daniel's mind raced, counting back. 5 years since the divorce. These kids looked about 4, which meant his hand went to his chest. He couldn't breathe properly. The math was simple, impossible to deny. Naomi had been pregnant when they split up, or right after, and she'd never told him. She'd had his children and raised them for 4 years without a single word. Anger flared hot in his chest, then immediately drowned in a wave of something else. Grief, maybe? Or loss so profound it made his knees weak. He'd missed everything. First steps, first words, 4 years of birthdays and scraped knees and bedtime stories. 4 years of being a father, stolen from him, or had he stolen them from himself? The memories came flooding back. The last months of their marriage. His mother, Victoria, constantly in his ear. "She's not right for our family, Daniel. People are talking about you two. She's probably after the money, dear. These things happen." And Daniel, weak and stupid, had listened. He'd let his mother's racism poison everything good he had. He'd accused Naomi of things that weren't true. He'd been cold when she needed warmth, suspicious when she needed trust. He'd signed those divorce papers convinced he was protecting himself, protecting his fortune, never once stopping to think that maybe he was destroying the best thing that had ever happened to him. And if Naomi had tried to tell him about the pregnancy, Daniel's stomach turned. His mother, Victoria, had controlled so much of his life back then. His schedule, his phone messages, his mail. If Naomi had reached out, Victoria would have intercepted it, would have shut it down, would have convinced Daniel it was another manipulation. "All right, my loves, go play near the cottage, okay? Stay where I can see you." Naomi's voice broke through his spiral of thoughts. "And be gentle with that ladybug. She's got a family to get back to." The children scattered, running toward a small white cottage Daniel could see in the distance. The property included several workers' residences. Apparently, Naomi lived in one of them, with his children, on his land, and he'd had no idea. Naomi stood up, brushing dirt off her knees. She turned to continue her conversation with the farmhand, and that's when she saw him. The clipboard slipped from her hands. It hit the ground with a dull thud, papers scattering in the light breeze. Her face went through a series of expressions so quickly Daniel couldn't track them all. Shock, fear, anger, and something else. Something that looked almost like the same grief he was feeling. Daniel. His name came out as barely a whisper. The farmhand looked between them, confusion evident on his weathered face. "Ms. Turner? You all right, Turner?" She'd gone back to her maiden name. "That shouldn't hurt as much as it did." "I'm fine, Roberto. Can you excuse us?" "Actually, why don't you take an early lunch? We'll finish this later." Roberto nodded slowly, still looking concerned, and walked away. Daniel watched him go, grateful for the man's discretion. When he looked back, Naomi had wrapped her arms around herself, a protective gesture he recognized. They stared at each other across the dirt path. 5 years of silence stretched between them like a canyon. "You're the new owner." Naomi's voice was steady now, but Daniel could hear the tremor underneath. "The shell company. I should have known. I should have looked deeper into who bought the property. I didn't know you worked here, obviously." "Naomi, don't." She held up a hand. "Just don't, not here. Not now. Those children," Daniel's voice cracked. "The 3 kids who just ran by. They're mine, aren't they?" Naomi's jaw tightened. For a long moment she didn't answer. Then finally she nodded, just once, sharp and quick. The confirmation hit him like a physical blow, even though he'd already known. Seeing her acknowledge it made it real in a way that observation couldn't. 4 years, Daniel said. And he hated how broken he sounded. "You kept them from me for 4 years. Fire flashed in Naomi's eyes. "I kept them from you. Is that really what you think happened? What else am I supposed to think?" "I had a right to know." "You had a right?" Naomi's laugh was bitter. "You wanted nothing to do with me, Daniel. You made that crystal clear. Your mother made it even clearer." "What's my mother got to do with this?" Naomi stared at him like he'd just said the earth was flat. "Everything. She has everything to do with this. But you know what? I'm not doing this right now. I'm not having this conversation in the middle of my workday with my children 50 feet away." "Our children. Mine," Naomi shot back. "I'm the one who's been here. I'm the one who walked the floors at 3 in the morning with 3 colicky babies. I'm the one who's done every diaper change, every doctor's appointment, every nightmare and fever and first day of preschool. Me, alone. So forgive me if I think of them as mine." Daniel felt each word like a knife. Because she was right. He hadn't been there. And whether that was his fault or hers or his mother's or fate's, the result was the same. He'd missed everything. I want to meet them, he said quietly. Properly. Naomi closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were shining with unshed tears. Of course you do. And they deserve to know their father. But Daniel, I need you to understand something. Those 3 babies over there, they're my entire world. Everything I do is for them. So if you're going to walk into their lives, you better be sure. You better be all in. Because I won't let you hurt them the way you hurt me. The way he hurt her. Past tense. As if that hurt was over and done with. But looking at her face, Daniel could see it was still there, still raw after all these years. I'm sure, he said. I want to know them. I want to be their father. Naomi studied him for a long moment. Then she bent down to gather her scattered papers, taking her time. When she stood back up, she looked tired. So incredibly tired. Come to the cottage tonight. 6 o'clock. We'll talk then, away from work. But Daniel? She met his eyes. If you break their hearts, I swear I'll make sure you regret it for the rest of your life. With that, she turned and walked away, her boots kicking up small clouds of dust. Daniel watched her go, his mind reeling. In the distance, he could hear the children playing, their laughter carrying on the wind. His children. A daughter and 2 sons he'd never held. Never sung to. Never tucked into bed. He looked down at his hands, the same hands that signed away his marriage without a second thought. These hands had built companies and signed billion-dollar deals and been featured on magazine covers. But they'd never changed a diaper, never wiped away a tear, never held what mattered most. Daniel pulled out his phone and canceled the rest of his day. The conference calls could wait. The meetings could be rescheduled. For the first time in his life, business wasn't the priority. He had a family to meet, and a lifetime of mistakes to somehow make right. Daniel sat in his SUV for 2 hours just watching. He'd parked far enough away that nobody would notice him, but close enough to see the cottage where Naomi lived with their children. His children. The word still felt foreign in his mind, like a language he hadn't learned to speak yet. Through the window he could see movement. Small shadows dancing past the curtains. Every few minutes he'd hear laughter float across the vineyard. Once he saw all 3 kids run outside to chase a butterfly, their identical faces bright with joy. Naomi appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame with her arms crossed, watching them with a soft smile that made Daniel's chest ache. She'd always wanted children. He remembered that now. They'd talked about it during their marriage, late at night when the world felt small and safe. She'd wanted 3 or 4. He'd said maybe someday when the business was more stable, when they had more time, always someday. Never now. And then someday came and he wasn't there for it. At 5:30, Daniel finally got out of the SUV. He'd changed out of his business suit and into jeans and a casual shirt, though he still looked too polished, too much like money, old habits. He walked slowly toward the cottage, his heart pounding harder with each step. Before he could knock, the door swung open. Naomi stood there, and for a second neither of them moved. She'd changed too into a simple green dress that brought out the warmth in her skin. Her hair was down now, falling in soft waves around her shoulders. She looked like the woman he'd married and nothing like her at all. "You're early," she said. "I've been here for 2 hours, just sitting in my car." Something flickered across her face. Understanding, maybe. Or pity. "Come in." They're in the living room. Daniel stepped inside, and the first thing that hit him was how much it felt like a home. The cottage was small but filled with life. Children's drawings covered the refrigerator. Toys were scattered across the floor in that organized chaos that only kids could create. There were photos everywhere, chronicling 4 years he'd missed. Birthday parties, first days of school, Halloween costumes, beach trips, a whole lifetime in frames. "Jordan, Mia, Cameron," Naomi called out. "Come here, please. There's someone I want you to meet." 3 pairs of feet thundered down the hallway. The children appeared, slightly cleaner than they'd been that afternoon, their hair damp from baths. They lined up in front of their mother, curiosity and caution mixing on their faces. Up close, the resemblance was even more striking. It was like looking at 3 tiny versions of himself, filtered through Naomi's beauty. "This is Daniel," Naomi said, her voice carefully neutral. "He's going to be spending some time with us." "Why?" The little girl, Mia, tilted her head. She had Daniel's eyes and Naomi's no-nonsense attitude already. Daniel opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "What did you say? How did you explain this?" Naomi knelt down beside them, her hand resting on Mia's shoulder. Because Daniel is your father. Your daddy. The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel watched 3 small faces process this information in completely different ways. Cameron, who seemed to be the quieter one, just stared with wide eyes. Jordan's expression turned suspicious, his little jaw setting in a way that reminded Daniel painfully of himself. But Mia lit up like a Christmas tree. Really? We have a daddy? She practically bounced. Tyler at preschool said everybody has a daddy. I said we didn't need one because we have mama, but now we have both. Mia, baby, calm down. Naomi smoothed her daughter's hair, but she was smiling. Then she looked at Jordan, whose arms were now crossed. Jordan, you okay? Where was he before? Jordan's voice was small but challenging. How come he's just showing up now? 4 years old and already asking the questions that mattered. Daniel felt his throat tighten. That's complicated, sweetheart, Naomi said gently. But your dad didn't know about you until today. And now that he does, he wants to be here. He wants to know you. Is he going to stay? Cameron asked quietly. Or is he going to leave like Emily's dad did? Daniel's heart cracked. These kids already understood abandonment, already knew that adults could disappear. He wanted to promise he'd never leave, but Naomi caught his eye and gave a tiny shake of her head. Don't make promises you might not keep. How about we start with dinner? Daniel said, finding his voice. I brought pizza. Hope you guys like pepperoni. Mia gasped. I love pepperoni. It's my favorite. Mine too, Daniel said, and her smile got impossibly bigger. Jordan remained skeptical, but Cameron's expression softened a little. Progress, Daniel thought. Tiny, terrifying progress. Dinner was awkward and wonderful and painful all at once. The kids sat at a small table while Daniel and Naomi took the couch, close enough to help but far enough to let them eat without hovering. Mia chattered nonstop, telling Daniel about her preschool teacher and her best friend and how she could count to 100. Jordan watched him with those suspicious eyes, occasionally asking pointed questions like, do you know how to cook? And do you have other kids we don't know about? Cameron just observed, taking everything in with a quiet intensity that Daniel recognized. He'd been that kind of kid too. The observer, the one who processed everything internally. After dinner, Naomi suggested Daniel read them a bedtime story. The kids each picked a book, arguing good-naturedly about whose turn it was to choose first. They settled on the couch, Mia immediately claiming the spot next to Daniel, while Jordan and Cameron flanked Naomi on the other side. Neutral territory. Daniel read about a caterpillar who ate too much, doing silly voices that made Mia giggle and even got a smile out of Cameron. Jordan remained stoic, but Daniel caught him leaning in during the exciting parts. When the story ended, Naomi took them to brush their teeth, while Daniel sat alone in the living room, surrounded by evidence of the life they'd built without him. He picked up one of the photo albums on the coffee table. The first picture was of Naomi in a hospital bed, exhausted and radiant, holding 3 tiny bundles. She looked so young, so scared, so alone. Daniel's hand shook as he turned the pages. First smiles, first bath, first Christmas with 3 babies in matching Santa outfits. Every milestone documented, every memory preserved. And he wasn't in a single photo. That was the hardest day of my life. Daniel looked up. Naomi stood in the hallway, her arms wrapped around herself again. That protective gesture, which one? The day they were born. I was alone. Well, my friend Kelly was there, but I didn't have you. I didn't have the person who was supposed to be there. She walked over and sat down, but not too close. There was still an ocean of hurt between them. Triplets usually come early. Mine didn't. I carried them to 37 weeks. The doctors said it was remarkable. I think they just knew I wasn't ready to do it alone. Why didn't you tell me? Daniel asked, even though he was afraid of the answer. When you found out you were pregnant, why didn't you reach out? Naomi laughed, but there was no humor in it. I did, Daniel. I tried. What do you mean? She stood up and walked to a small desk in the corner. From a drawer, she pulled out a folder. When she handed it to him, Daniel's hands shook as he opened it. Inside were printed emails. Dozens of them. All addressed to him. All returned as undeliverable. Your mother changed your email, Naomi said quietly, after the divorce. I didn't know that. I kept sending messages wondering why you weren't responding. She pulled out another paper. A phone log. I called your office 47 times in 2 weeks. Your assistant said you were unavailable, that you'd left instructions not to be disturbed by me under any circumstances. Daniel's blood ran cold. I never said that. I know that now. But at the time, Naomi shrugged. I thought you hated me that much, that you wanted me erased from your life so completely that even news of a pregnancy wouldn't matter. My mother. The words came out like poison. She did this. She controlled my schedule, my calls, everything back then. She did. Naomi pulled out one more document, a letter in his mother's handwriting. This came 2 weeks before the babies were born, hand-delivered to my apartment. Daniel read it, and with each word his anger grew. Victoria had written to Naomi claiming to speak for him, saying that Daniel wanted nothing to do with any child of theirs, that if Naomi pursued child support or tried to contact him again, there would be legal consequences, that it would be best for everyone if she simply disappeared. The letter ended with a check. A substantial one. Hush money. I tore up the check, Naomi said, but the letter, I kept it. As a reminder of what your family thought of me. Of what I thought you thought of me. Daniel couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. His mother had done this, had stolen 4 years of his life with his children because of her prejudice and her need for control. She'd let him believe he had no children while Naomi struggled alone. She'd hurt them all, and for what? To maintain some idea of family purity that was rotten to its core? I'm sorry, he finally managed. I'm so sorry. I should have fought harder for our marriage. I should have questioned things. You should have trusted me, Naomi interrupted. Her eyes were wet now, years of pain finally spilling over. That's what you should have done. Trusted that I loved you, that I wasn't some gold digger your mother made me out to be. I worked, Daniel. I had my own career, my own dreams. I didn't need your money. I needed you, and you chose her over me. I was an idiot. Yes, you were. She wiped her eyes roughly. But you know what? I don't regret how things turned out. Because I got them, Jordan, Mia, and Cameron. They're the best thing that ever happened to me, and I raised them on my own, and we're fine. We're more than fine. We're happy. I can see that, and he could. Despite the modest cottage and the hand-me-down furniture, despite being a single mother working full-time with 3 kids to raise, Naomi had created something beautiful. Something he'd had no part in building. But they deserve to know their father. And I deserve a chance to be one. Please, Naomi, let me try. She looked at him for a long time. He could see the war happening behind her eyes. The part of her that wanted to protect her children from any possible hurt, and the part that knew he was right. They deserved a father. He deserved a chance. Okay, she finally said, but we do this slowly. On my terms. You don't get to just swoop in and play dad when it's convenient and then disappear when work gets busy. If you're in, you're all in. That means showing up, being consistent, putting them first. I will. I promise. And another thing, her voice got harder. Your mother stays away. I mean it, Daniel. I don't care if she's sorry or if she wants to meet her grandchildren. She doesn't get near them. Not until I say so. Maybe not ever. Daniel nodded. He'd already decided that the moment he read Victoria's letter. His mother had made her choice. Now she could live with the consequences. I'll talk to her. Make it clear that she's not welcome until she makes real changes. If she ever does. Good. Naomi stood up, signaling the end of the conversation. You should go. It's late and they have preschool tomorrow. Daniel got up slowly, not wanting to leave but knowing he had to. At the door he paused. Can I come back tomorrow? Maybe take them for ice cream or something? Not tomorrow. I work until 6. But Friday. You can come Friday afternoon. We'll go to the park. Friday. I'll be here. As Daniel walked back to his SUV, he looked back at the cottage. Through the window he could see Naomi moving around, tidying up, doing the 1,000 small things single parents do every night. He'd missed so much. So many nights like this one. So many moments he could never get back. But he was here now. And if Naomi would let him, he'd spend the rest of his life making up for the time he'd lost. Starting with one Friday afternoon at the park with 3 children who barely knew him, but who carried his face, his eyes, his smile, his family. Finally, after all this time, his family. Daniel sat in his SUV for a long time before driving away, watching the lights in the cottage go off one by one. When the last light finally went dark, he started the engine. He had phone calls to make, a mother to confront, a life to rearrange. Everything was about to change. And for the first time in 5 years, Daniel felt like maybe, just maybe, he was finally making the right choice. Friday afternoon couldn't come fast enough. Daniel had spent the past 3 days learning everything he could about 4-year-olds, what they ate, what they liked, how to talk to them. He'd never felt so unprepared for anything in his life, and he'd negotiated billion-dollar deals with some of the toughest people in business. But those people didn't have his eyes. They didn't call anyone else daddy yet. They couldn't break his heart with a single look of disappointment. He showed up at the cottage at exactly 3 o'clock with a bag full of things he hoped weren't mistakes. A soccer ball, because the internet said kids this age had lots of energy, 3 juice boxes because kids got thirsty, and a first aid kit because apparently kids fell down a lot and he wanted to be prepared. Naomi opened the door looking amused. "You brought a first aid kit to the park?" "Better safe than sorry," she almost smiled, almost. "They're getting their shoes on. Come in." Inside, chaos reigned. Jordan couldn't find his left shoe. Mia insisted on wearing her princess crown to the park. Cameron sat quietly by the door, already ready, watching his siblings with patient eyes. "Jordan, it's under the couch," Naomi called out without even looking. "Mia, the crown stays home. You'll lose it on the swings." "But I want to be a princess at the park." "You're always a princess, baby. The crown doesn't change that." Daniel watched Naomi handle them with such easy confidence. She knew where the missing shoe was without looking. She knew exactly what to say to redirect Mia without causing a meltdown. She knew Cameron was ready and waiting, probably had been for 10 minutes. This was her life. This was what she'd built while he was busy making money and missing everything that mattered. "Can I help?" he asked, feeling useless. "Can you grab their water bottles from the fridge?" 3 of them, all labeled. Daniel found the bottles, each one with a name written in permanent marker. Even this simple thing spoke volumes. 3 of everything. 3 car seats he'd noticed in Naomi's old Honda. 3 toothbrushes by the bathroom sink. 3 small beds in the room he'd glimpsed down the hall. She'd multiplied everything in her life by 3, and she'd done it alone. The park was a 15-minute drive. Daniel offered to drive them in his SUV, but Naomi gave him a look that said absolutely not. So he followed behind her Honda, watching 3 car seats through the rear window. 3 small heads bobbing as they sang along to some kid's song he didn't know. At the park, the kids exploded out of the car like they'd been holding their breath the whole ride. Mia made a beeline for the swings. Jordan headed straight for the climbing structure. Cameron lingered near Naomi, holding her hand. "He's shy with new people," Naomi explained quietly. "Give him time." "How much time did it take you to get him to warm up when he was a baby?" Naomi's expression softened. "About 2 seconds. He was always a mama's boy. But with others, he needs to observe first. Figure out if you're safe." Safe. The word hit Daniel hard. His own son needed to figure out if his father was safe. What kind of world had he created where that was even a question? "Daniel!" Mia's voice rang out across the playground. Push me on the swing." At least one of them had decided he was safe. Daniel jogged over to the swings where Mia was already seated and waiting impatiently. He positioned himself behind her and gave a gentle push. "Higher," she demanded. "Mia, be polite," Naomi called from the bench where she sat with Cameron. "Please push me higher, Daddy." "Daddy?" She said it so naturally, like she'd been saying it her whole life. Daniel's hands shook as he pushed the swing higher. Each time she came back to him, she was laughing, her head thrown back, completely fearless. She trusted him already. Trusted him not to push too hard, not to let her fall. Trusted him just because Naomi had said he was her father. He didn't deserve that trust yet. But he'd spend every day earning it. After 10 minutes, Jordan appeared at his elbow. "Can you push me too?" The second swing was empty. Daniel moved over and Jordan climbed on without waiting for help. He was more reserved than his sister, but there was curiosity in his eyes now instead of just suspicion. "Hold on tight," Daniel said. "I know how to swing," Jordan informed him. "I'm not a baby." "Right, of course, sorry." They swung in silence for a while, Daniel pushing both kids, trying to keep the rhythm steady. It was harder than it looked. Every time he thought he had it figured out, someone would drag their feet or lean back wrong and throw everything off. "Do you know how to play soccer?" Jordan asked suddenly. "Yeah, I do. I played in college, and college is for big people, right?" "Very big people, adults." Jordan considered this. "Can you teach me soccer?" Daniel's heart squeezed. "I'd love to. I brought a ball. Want to play after swinging? Okay. Jordan dragged his feet in the dirt, slowing himself down. But I'm probably already really good at it. I just want to see if you know anything. Daniel bit back a smile. Fair enough. They played soccer on the grass field while Naomi and Cameron watched from the sidelines. Mia abandoned the swings to join them, though she was more interested in picking dandelions than actually kicking the ball. Jordan took it seriously, his little face scrunched up in concentration as Daniel showed him how to dribble, how to pass, how to aim for a goal. You're pretty good, Jordan admitted after 20 minutes, for an old person. I'm 38. That's not that old. My mama is 29. You're way older than her. Daniel glanced over at Naomi, who was clearly trying not to laugh. 29. She'd been 24 when they married. Just a kid herself, really. And he'd been 33, so sure he knew everything. So convinced his mother was just looking out for him. Your mama is pretty amazing, Daniel said, kicking the ball gently toward Jordan, taking care of all three of you by herself. She's the best mama in the whole world, Jordan said fiercely. Then quieter. Sometimes she cries at night, though, when she thinks we're sleeping. I don't like it when she cries. The confession hit Daniel like a punch. Naomi cried at night. Of course she did. Single parenting triplets while working full-time and probably struggling with money, dealing with the pain of what he'd done to her, what his mother had done. And she cried when her kids couldn't hear because she was trying to be strong for them. I'm going to try to make sure she doesn't have to cry anymore, Daniel said. Would that be okay with you? Jordan studied him with those serious eyes. How? By being here, by helping, by being your dad if you'll let me. I guess you can try, Jordan said. Then he kicked the ball hard, changing the subject. Bet you can't get it past me. They played until Mia complained she was thirsty, and Cameron finally wandered over to watch more closely. Daniel taught them all how to pass the ball in a circle, which mostly devolved into chaos and laughter. Cameron even kicked the ball once, a small smile crossing his face when everyone cheered. On the way back to the cars, Mia grabbed Daniel's hand without asking. It was the most natural thing in the world to her. Daniel looked down at the small, fingers wrapped around his and felt something shift in his chest. This was what he'd been missing. Not just the big moments, but this. A little hand in his. Unconditional acceptance from someone who barely knew him but had decided he was worth loving anyway. Can we get ice cream? Mia asked, looking up at him with those gray-green eyes they shared. That's up to your mom. 3 pairs of eyes turned to Naomi, who sighed in that way parents do when they're about to say yes but want to pretend they might say no. Fine, but only if you promise to eat your dinner later. They went to a small ice cream shop in town. Daniel bought 5 cones and carried them carefully to the outdoor table, where Naomi had corralled the kids. Chocolate for Mia, vanilla for Cameron, strawberry for Jordan, mint chocolate chip for Naomi, because he remembered it was her favorite, and plain chocolate for himself. You remembered, Naomi said softly when he handed her the cone. I remember a lot of things. They ate their ice cream while the kids chattered about everything and nothing. Daniel learned that Mia wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up, that Jordan was the fastest runner in his preschool class, that Cameron liked to draw and was really good at it. He learned that they'd never been to Disneyland but wanted to go, that their favorite movie was about talking fish, that they thought vegetables were gross except for corn, which Mia insisted wasn't a vegetable anyway. He learned that he'd missed knowing these small details, that being a parent wasn't just about the big stuff. It was about knowing that one kid liked his sandwiches cut in triangles, while another wanted them cut in squares. It was about remembering which one was afraid of the dark and which one loved thunderstorms. It was about being present for the boring, regular, everyday moments that actually made up a life. When Cameron's ice cream started melting faster than he could eat it, Daniel grabbed napkins and helped him clean up. The little boy didn't pull away, didn't flinch, just accepted the help like it was normal, like Daniel had been doing this all along. Thank you, Cameron said quietly, his first real words to Daniel all afternoon. You're welcome, buddy. The drive back to the cottage felt different than the drive to the park, softer somehow. When they arrived, Jordan asked if Daniel wanted to see his room. Mia wanted to show him her stuffed animal collection. Cameron just stood by Naomi, but he was watching Daniel with less caution now. Daniel spent an hour in their small cottage, seeing their world. Jordan's room had a poster of a soccer player on the wall. Mia's had princess sheets and more stuffed animals than seemed physically possible. Cameron's corner was neater, with drawings taped up everywhere and a bookshelf organized by color. "Time for baths," Naomi announced eventually. "Say goodnight to Daniel." "Do you have to go?" Mia's face fell. "Can't you stay for dinner?" Daniel looked at Naomi, who hesitated. He could see the war in her eyes again, the part that wanted to keep her boundaries clear, and the part that saw how happy the kids were. "Not tonight," Naomi said gently. "But Daniel can come back again soon, right?" "Tomorrow?" Jordan asked. "I have to work tomorrow," Daniel said, hating that it was true. "But how about Sunday? We could do something fun. Maybe go to the zoo." "The zoo?" Mia practically shrieked. "Mama, can we?" "Please, please, please." "We'll see," Naomi said, which Daniel was learning meant probably yes. The kids hugged him goodbye. Mia threw her whole body into it. Jordan gave him a quick, awkward squeeze. Cameron just waved, but there was a tiny smile on his face that felt like a victory. At the door, Naomi walked him out. The evening air was cool, the vineyard peaceful in the fading light. "You did good today," she said. "They liked you." "I liked them. They're amazing, Naomi. You did an incredible job raising them." "We're not done yet," she said, but he could hear the pride in her voice. "They're still works in progress. Jordan's got a stubborn streak. Mia's got too much energy and not enough caution. Cameron bottles things up." "I wonder where Jordan gets the stubborn streak from," Daniel said with a small smile. Naomi almost laughed. "Almost. Yeah, well, he comes by it honestly." They stood there for a moment, and Daniel remembered other evenings like this. When they were married and young and stupid in love. When they'd stand on their balcony and watch the sun set and plan a future that never happened. "I meant what I said to Jordan," Daniel told her, "about making sure you don't have to cry anymore." Naomi's expression shuddered. "I don't need you to save me, Daniel. I'm doing fine." "I know you are, but you shouldn't have to do it alone. Let me help. Not just with the kids, with everything." "This isn't about us," Naomi said firmly. "This is about them. Don't confuse the two." "I'm not confused." "Good. Because I'm not going back there. To us. That door is closed." She said it with such finality that Daniel knew better than to argue. Not now. Not when things were just starting to work. But as he drove away from the cottage, he couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, closed doors could be opened again. With time. With patience. With proof that people could change. He had a lot to prove. To Naomi, to his kids, to himself. But for the first time in 5 years, Daniel felt like he was moving in the right direction. One Friday afternoon at a time. 3 weeks had passed since that first park visit, and Daniel had fallen into a rhythm he never knew existed. Wednesdays and Fridays were his days with the kids. Sundays, too, when Naomi wasn't working. He'd rearranged his entire life around their schedule, moved meetings, delegated projects. His business partners thought he'd lost his mind. His assistant had to completely rebuild his calendar. But for the first time in his adult life, work wasn't the center of his universe. The kids were. He'd learned so much in those 3 weeks. Learned that Mia liked her toast cut into triangles and would refuse to eat it any other way. That Jordan had nightmares about monsters and needed a nightlight. That Cameron was allergic to strawberries and they had to be careful at birthday parties. He'd learned that parenting was exhausting and wonderful and terrifying all at once. He'd also learned that he was falling in love with Naomi all over again. Watching her with the kids, seeing her strength and patience and endless capacity for love, made him remember why he'd married her in the first place. But every time he thought about saying something, her words echoed in his head. "That door is closed." so he kept his feelings to himself and focused on being the father his children deserved. It was a Wednesday afternoon when everything changed. Daniel had picked up the kids from preschool, something he'd started doing regularly. They were at his penthouse apartment, the one he'd bought furniture for specifically so the kids would have space to play. Jordan was building with blocks. Mia was coloring at the coffee table. Cameron sat next to Daniel on the couch, quietly reading a picture book. That's when Jordan suddenly stopped building and clutched his stomach. "My tummy hurts," he said, his face scrunching up. "Did you eat too many cookies?" Daniel asked. He'd let them have 3 each after lunch, which Naomi probably would have said was too many. "No, it really hurts." Jordan's voice got smaller. "Really bad." Daniel knelt down beside him. "Where does it hurt?" Jordan pointed to his lower right side. "Here, and I feel sick." Something about the way Jordan looked worried Daniel. The boy had gone pale. His forehead felt warm, and when Daniel gently pressed where Jordan had pointed, the child cried out in pain. "Okay, buddy, we're going to go see a doctor, all right?" "I want Mama," Jordan whimpered. "I know. I'm calling her right now." Daniel pulled out his phone with shaking hands. He'd dealt with corporate crises, with hostile takeovers, with company scandals. But this was different. This was his son in pain, and he had no idea what to do. Naomi answered on the second ring. "Daniel, is everything okay?" "Jordan's sick. He's complaining about stomach pain on his lower right side. He's warm and he looks pale, and when I touched where it hurts, he cried out." There was silence for a beat. Then Naomi's voice came back, sharp and commanding. "That could be appendicitis. Don't give him anything to eat or drink. I'm leaving work right now. Meet me at Valley Children's Hospital. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Should I call an ambulance?" "No, you'll get there faster if you drive. But Daniel, drive carefully. Don't scare the other kids. Can you do that?" "Yes, I've got this. I know you do. I'll see you there." The phone went dead. Daniel looked at 3 small faces watching him with varying degrees of concern. Mia had stopped coloring. Cameron had put down his book. Jordan was still clutching his stomach, tears rolling down his cheeks now. Daniel took a deep breath. Naomi said not to scare them. He could do this. He had to do this. "All right, everyone. Jordan's not feeling well, so we're going to take a trip to the doctor. Mia, can you grab your shoes? Cameron, help your sister. Jordan, buddy, I'm going to carry you to the car, okay?" Getting 3 kids into car seats while one was crying in pain was harder than any business deal Daniel had ever closed. But he managed it, keeping his voice calm even though his heart was racing. He drove to the hospital just above the speed limit, checking the rearview mirror constantly to make sure Jordan was okay. "Is Jordan going to die?" Mia asked from her car seat, her voice small and scared. "No, baby. The doctors are going to help him feel better. You promise?" Daniel hesitated. He'd learned not to make promises he couldn't keep. "I promise the doctors are going to do everything they can." At the hospital, he carried Jordan through the emergency room doors while Mia and Cameron held on to his jacket. A nurse took one look at Jordan's pale face and the way he was curled up and immediately started the check-in process. "Possible appendicitis," Daniel said. "His mother is on her way." They were taken back quickly. Jordan was placed on a bed, and Daniel stood there holding his son's hand while nurses asked questions and took vital signs. Mia and Cameron pressed against Daniel's legs, scared and quiet. He wanted to comfort them, but he couldn't let go of Jordan's hand. The little boy was holding on so tight. "Daddy," Jordan whispered. "It really hurts. I know, buddy. The doctors are going to figure it out." "Daddy." Jordan had been calling him that more and more, but it still made Daniel's chest tight every single time. This brave little boy who'd been so suspicious of him at first, who'd needed time to trust, was now looking at him with complete faith that Daniel would make everything okay. 10 minutes later, Naomi burst through the door. Her hair was messy, her work clothes wrinkled, and there was pure terror in her eyes. She went straight to Jordan, her hands immediately checking him over. "Baby, Mama's here. Tell me where it hurts." Jordan pointed again, and this time when Naomi pressed gently, he screamed. She pulled back immediately, her face going white. She looked at Daniel, and he saw the fear there. The same fear he was feeling. A doctor came in shortly after, a woman with kind eyes and graying hair. She examined Jordan carefully, asked more questions, and then ordered blood work and an ultrasound. "It does look like appendicitis," she said gently. "We'll confirm with the test, but if I'm right, he'll need surgery. Tonight. Surgery." Daniel felt the floor shift under him. His 4-year-old son needed surgery. Naomi made a sound like she'd been punched. Is he going to be okay? Appendicitis is serious, but we catch it all the time in kids. The surgery is routine. He'll be okay. The doctor smiled at Jordan. You're going to feel much better soon, buddy. The next hour was a blur. Tests were run. Results came back. Yes, it was appendicitis. Yes, he needed surgery. The surgeon was called. Paperwork was signed. Daniel stood beside Naomi through all of it. And at some point, without either of them really deciding to, they were holding hands. Mia and Cameron were picked up by Kelly, Naomi's friend, who arrived looking worried and gave Naomi a long hug. Call me after, she said. I'll keep them as long as you need. Then it was just Daniel and Naomi in the waiting room while Jordan was in surgery. They sat side by side in plastic chairs, not talking, still holding hands. Other families came and went. Doctors were paged overhead. The coffee machine in the corner hummed constantly, and they waited. I was so scared, Naomi finally said, her voice barely a whisper. When you called, all I could think was, what if something happens to him? What if I lose him? You're not going to lose him. The doctor said it's routine. Kids die from routine things all the time, Daniel. The world is full of things that can hurt them, and I can't protect them from everything, and it terrifies me every single day. Daniel squeezed her hand. You don't have to protect them alone anymore. I'm here. You were good today, Naomi said, looking at him. Really looking at him. When you called, you were calm. You knew what to do. And Jordan called you Daddy. He's been doing that more lately. I know. He told me last week that he's glad you showed up. That having a dad is pretty cool. Naomi's eyes filled with tears. They love you already. All three of them. Even Cameron, though he won't say it out loud yet. I love them too. So much it scares me sometimes. Welcome to parenting, Naomi said with a watery laugh. It's just constant fear that something will happen to them, mixed with moments of joy so pure it almost hurts. They fell silent again. Daniel thought about Jordan's little hand holding his, about Mia's fearless laughter, about Cameron's quiet smiles, about how his whole life had changed in 3 weeks, how he'd thought he was successful before, but he hadn't understood what success meant. Success wasn't money or power or seeing your name in magazines. Success was 3 kids who called you Daddy. Success was being there when it mattered. I'm sorry, he said suddenly. Naomi looked at him. For what? For not being there. For the pregnancy, the birth, the first 4 years. For letting my mother manipulate me. For not fighting for us. For all of it. Daniel, we've been over this, I know. But sitting here waiting to hear if our son is okay. All I can think about is how you did this alone. Every doctor's appointment, every fever, every scare. You handled it all by yourself while I was busy being successful. He said the last word like it tasted bitter. I'm so sorry, Naomi, for everything. Naomi was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I'm sorry too. You have nothing to be sorry for. I do, though. I could have tried harder to reach you. I could have showed up at your office, caused a scene, demanded you listen. But I was hurt and angry, and part of me wanted you to suffer for choosing your mother over me, so I let you miss out on them, and that wasn't fair either. Your hurt was valid. Maybe. But they deserved their father from the beginning. I kept him from them because of my pride. That wasn't right. They looked at each other, really looked at each other for the first time since that day in the vineyard, and Daniel saw that Naomi had grown too. She wasn't the young woman he'd married. She was stronger, more sure of herself. She'd been through fire and come out tempered like steel. She was magnificent. Can I tell you something? He asked. What? I'm falling in love with you again. Actually, I don't think I ever stopped. I think I just buried it under hurt and stubbornness and my mother's poison. But it's still there. It's always been there. Naomi's breath caught.
Daniel, don't. I'm not asking for anything.
I just wanted you to know, whatever happens, whatever we decide about us, you should know that you're still the best thing that ever happened to me. You and the kids. Before Naomi could respond, the surgeon appeared in the doorway. Both of them jumped up, hands still clasped together. Jordan did great, the doctor said with a smile. The appendix was inflamed, but we got it out before it ruptured. He's in recovery now. You can see him in about 20 minutes. The relief was so overwhelming that Daniel's knees actually buckled. Naomi caught him, or maybe he caught her. Either way, they were holding each other up, both crying, both laughing, both thanking the doctor over and over. He's okay. Naomi sobbed into Daniel's chest. He's okay. He's okay, Daniel repeated, holding her tight. He's going to be fine. They stood like that for a long moment, just holding each other. And for those few seconds, it felt like they were the couple they used to be, before the hurt, before the divorce, before everything fell apart. Just two people who loved each other and who loved their son and who were grateful beyond measure that he was safe. When they finally pulled apart, Naomi wiped her eyes. I need to call Kelly. Let her know Jordan's okay. She'll want to tell Mia and Cameron so they're not worried. Good idea. While Naomi made the call, Daniel sat back down, his hands shaking with leftover adrenaline. He'd meant what he said. He loved her, had never stopped loving her.